Hi, I'm Tamez, and today I'm really excited to show you a really fun idea to make some spring cupcakes. And these cupcakes would be perfect for Easter if you wanted to do that. But the first thing I'm going to do is take out my fondant. And this is fondant that I've just purchased at the craft store. And it comes in a big box with some instructions, just like that. I'll just put that right there. But what you do is, as soon as you get it, and I've already gone ahead and baked some cupcakes. I have just a couple here to show you. I have some square pieces of parchment paper cut out. I have a little mold for the fondant, and we'll get more into that, and I'll show you a little close-up of that too. And then some powdered food colors and some brushes to paint the powdered food colors on. But what I'm going to do first, and some frosting to frost the cupcakes. First is soften the fondant. And when you get it from the store, it's kind of hard. But when it's in the package like this, just go ahead and start pushing it down. And when you think you have it soft enough, when you feel it's nice and flexible in this package, it's really noisy. But you can go ahead and stop and just put it aside. You're just getting it ready to use. Now what I have right here are some cupcakes. Just simple, nice butter cupcakes. Yellow golden butter cupcakes. Tasty, easy to make. But what I'm going to do, because we're going to flip them over on their top, is just trim off any excess right from the top. Just create a flat surface for them to stand on. And then you want to make sure and not get any crumbs mixed in, because when you're working with fondant, you want to make sure and have a nice clean surface, because anything on the surface will transfer to the fondant and will show up in the final product, and that's never good. So anyways, what you can do next is take off the paper from the cupcakes. And I have these little parchment pieces for them to stand on, so everything stays nice and clean. So next what you want to do is take some just plain vanilla frosting. And this is frosting that you can get at the craft store as well. It's made by a company called Wilton. And because you're putting fondant on here, or you could make buttercream, but I found that this is nice and fast and easy and ready-made for you. So all you do is just go ahead and put a little layer of frosting all around your little cupcake. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't matter if there are crumbs in this frosting so much, as long as it's not too many crumbs. If this was a chocolate cupcake, you would want to make sure and have a nice layer of white frosting on here to cover up any of that chocolate cake underneath, so the fondant will show a nice white true color. And it's always good to have a little rag around to wipe off your hands. Now I'm just going to set these aside and do them later. So to cover this with fondant, what you're going to do, we can go ahead and actually transfer this to a new one and get rid of all the excess frosting. So that way the fondant lays nice and smooth and doesn't have to get all that frosting on there when you're trimming away any excess. So next what you can do is take a little piece of cheesecloth, and what I have right here on the cheesecloth is some powdered sugar and some cornstarch, about a 50-50 mix. And this is just to give you some traction when you're rolling out the fondant, and so that it doesn't stick. And the cheesecloth really makes a nice little sachet, perfect little amount, as you pounce it right on the surface. And you can go ahead and lay that aside for later if you so choose. Now take your fondant, and it is a nice white fondant, and you can go ahead and cut off a little piece. The great thing about cupcakes is they don't really require too much fondant to cover the entire thing. So again, softening everything. And sometimes when I'm working with fondant, I really like to put on gloves just to keep my hands from getting too sticky, because fondant is a dough made of sugar, and so it will melt on you if you're a little too warm. But go ahead and just soften this dough a little bit more and lay it right there. And then you can take your rolling pin and even maybe pounce a little bit of that powdered sugar and cornstarch mixture right on. And just go ahead and roll it out. And when you're rolling this, you want to always make sure and be moving it so you know that it is not being stuck to the surface. You're not going to try and move this and be sad when it's sticking. But fondant, the main thing about fondant is you get it nice and thin. A lot of times people get this fondant and they like to go a little too thick with it, and then while it is nice and easy to peel off because no one really likes to eat fondant too much anyways, it doesn't really look good. So you want a nice thin but not too thin layer of fondant, probably about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit thicker. Now when you're thinking about covering something, be it a little cupcake or a cake, you're not just thinking about the top, but you're also thinking about the sides. So that does add up into the length, the width that you're going to need. But this looks like a nice big piece of fondant. Perfect for this cupcake, actually probably a little too big, but that's okay, because you can go ahead and reuse this fondant, any excess that you trim off. I'm just going to go ahead and get nice and thin. And then take it. Take your little cupcake and see how nice and moldable it is. Just lay it right on top and see how it starts to come down on its own. Now with your hands, just go ahead, smooth it on the top, and also just work it down the cupcake, molding it, squeezing it in with your fingers. Sometimes I even like to spin it. But then you make your way all the way down to the bottom. And see how nice and smooth and beautiful this is? Sometimes you just really can't get the smoothness of fondant with buttercream, and that's why you would use fondant, because you just can't get the same effect. Now with a knife, and you could use a little X-Acto knife or a serrated knife, just go ahead and press right up against the cake, trim away any excess, because I should have taken a little bit of a sharper knife, but that's okay. You can make it work, and just go ahead and press that down. Now if you have any frosting peeking down on the bottom from the parchment paper, you can go ahead and get another new little piece of parchment, or you can place this on a tray, because at this point you're really not going to be working with frosting anymore, and you don't want to get any frosting on the fondant and ruin that beautiful smooth appearance. But there, that is done for the cupcake part. So the next thing you're going to do is go ahead and take a little piece of this extra, it's right here, perfect for you, fondant, and roll it into a little ball. And it doesn't matter how much, because with these molds, well, you want to make sure you have a good enough size, a good enough amount, but just eyeball it. It's better to have more than less in this case. But I'm just going to make 3 little balls, because I have 3 little things that I want to go ahead and make out of this mold. And this is a fun silicone mold that Wilton makes. And so what you do is you take your little sachet and you dust it. And then you take it, tap that out. So you have a nice fine layer of cornstarch. And you can even go in with a brush, because believe it or not, you don't really need to see this cornstarch to know that it's there. You don't want too much, because if you did choose to eat this, even though there is sugar mixed in with that cornstarch, you might have an off taste, an off flavor. So go ahead and just make sure any excess is out of there with a brush. Take your little piece of fondant and press it right into the mold. Now I'm going to use this flower one right here. And so for this, all you do is just press it in, and with pressure, kind of peel away the excess slowly. And then just kind of with pressure, pushing and pulling, the fondant will kind of cut itself on the edge of the mold. And when you're done, all you have to do to release it is just kind of wiggle the mold, and there you have a perfect molded flower. And these are great. I love these molds so much. Now just set that aside for a second, because we need to make 2 leaves. and there to release those right onto your tray. Really fun. Now with this, what I'm going to do with those little pieces I've just made, another thing about fondant, it's really important, you should always keep it covered with plastic wrap in the package, because if you leave it out for too long, it's going to dry out and it won't really be reusable. There are some things you can do to reconstitute fondant, but it's better just to keep it covered and keep it from drying out in the first place. So I'm probably not going to be able to use that at the end of this, but that's okay. So what I'm going to do with these colors, and these are powdered food colors that I absolutely love, is just take some and apply some color just lightly to the pieces that we've just made, and all of the texture from the mold will actually help to hold the color in there. So just take a little bit with your brush. And then you can go ahead and apply your decorations with the same frosting that you use to decorate the cake. Now just with a little palette knife or something, just take a little piece, and we're going to set these off slightly. So just a little bit of frosting right there, right wherever you want to place your flower. And then when you want to put down your leaves, that little dab of frosting there. Make sure it's a good, not too much frosting, but you definitely want to make sure that you can see it so that you know when you put something against it, it will stick. I'm playing around with the placement a little bit. But there you have it. Really nice, simple, easy spring cupcake, and you can make a ton of these in no time at all, and have them all lined up and make a really nice effect. But if you wanted an idea for a spring cupcake that I think anybody will really be impressed by and will love to eat, here you go, and I hope you make it. Thanks!